This week I am back in Chicago and I have the opportunity to drive a really cool vehicle. And because this is completely new, there's a lot of interesting and cool technology on this vehicle. So what I want to do in this video is I want to do a tech check. My name is Jill Ciminillo, and this week's car du jour is the Volkswagen ID Buzz. All right, since I am outside of the vehicle, you know what? I'm just gonna start with the key and talk about the doors. Now, you have the opportunity to open the doors simply by pressing a button on the key. You can also open and close the rear hatch similarly by pressing the button on the key. And as a shorty, I really appreciate that because, by the way, I am not reaching that to put it down. So I can, again, just press the button on the key and close all of the doors. So that is just the first very little thing that I will show you, and it's to be expected. This is not a new feature. Most minivans have this option, but I just think it's cool. As we move to the inside of the Volkswagen ID Buzz, I will point out you do have passive entry. So this will lock the vehicle, as well as, putting your hand on the door handle will unlock the vehicle. And then when you climb inside, this is one of those electric vehicles that as soon as you put your butt in the seat, it essentially turns on. Now, in order to put the vehicle into drive, you do have to put your foot on the brake, and then you see everything really turns on and you are free to use this gear shifter in order to put the vehicle into drive, reverse, whatever you need to do. So while we are here, actually, you know what? Let's just talk about the gear shift, because we've seen a proliferation of column shifters that have started to up on vehicles, electric and non-electric. And I mean, this is pretty standard location, and it will instead of pushing it up or down, you actually have to turn it to put it into drive or reverse. And it's just a quick tap to put it into neutral, like just a kind of a half turn into it, as you are moving it up. But like if you do like a full hard turn, you can get it to go all the way up or all the way down, and then just like a little half turn to put it into neutral. Now let's talk about D versus B also really quick. So D is going to be just your normal drive mode. It will feel like a normal, gasoline vehicle. It creeps, it coasts, it does those things. But if you give it another pop and you put it into B, that's going to be some more aggressive regenerative braking while you are driving, and it will slow down as you take your foot off the accelerator. It's not true one pedal driving, but it does create some friction and regeneration in the braking system. To put it into park, you just hit the button on the end of the wand. Now, before we dig into these screens, I do want to just kind of show a quick view of the interior. Even though this is not tech related, you have 3 rows, and this vehicle specifically has the captain's chairs in the center, but you do have a bench seat available in rear wheel drive models. If I could say that again, rear wheel drive models. And then you have 2 seats in the 3rd row. So this can seat 7, but generally you're going to seat 6. Now, something really interesting happened here, and I have found this to be a little bit annoying and somewhat difficult for me specifically because I'm smaller and I'm on the lighter side of things. But as I turned around to show you the rear of the vehicle actually turned off. And I found that when I was driving, as I would shift my body to like look at a mirror or out the side of the vehicle would shut off. So essentially what I found to happen was if I was taking like one butt cheek off of the chair or the other, sometimes the vehicle just shut off. Now the vehicle had to be stopped. It wouldn't shut off while I was actually moving, but if I was looking to make sure and while I was stopped but not in park, it would shut off. And that was just a little bit interesting, I'm not gonna lie. While I'm in this position, a couple of things that I will show you or the closeness of the screen. So this is a big screen. I like the fact that it's close so that it's easy to reach, because you have your slider for your volume here, your slider for your temperature controls here, and you know, all of your icons surrounding the screen. So all of these things are easy to touch. Now, the other thing that I'm going to point out in terms of this driving position is you do have a manual release right here for your steering wheel, but as you move your steering wheel up and down, the gauge cluster and the column shifter move with the vehicle, so or with the steering wheel. So I like that, because that means that this is always going to be in a really good position for you to be able to see it, whether you have the steering wheel up or the steering wheel down. It's never going to bisect the information that you need to see on the gauge cluster. And I do like that. So that is definitely a good thing. All right, we will turn the camera back around so you can see what I'm seeing while we look at the infotainment, the gauge cluster, and yeah, I actually want to look at the side mirrors as well. You know what, and I'm just going to start with the side mirrors and actually the window openings right now. And if you've driven other Volkswagen vehicles or the ID4, this is not going to be completely unfamiliar to you. But in order to change your side mirrors, like, you can turn this wheel and you can see it hits the L, you can turn it again and it gets to R, and then what you can do is use the wheel then to adjust your mirrors depending on where you need them to be. So I like the fact that Volkswagen has not gone all in on the EV craze of putting your side mirror adjustments and your steering wheel adjustments in the screen. You still have manual adjustments, and you know, at first I thought you had to touch, at first I thought you had to touch these things to be able to get them to change, but it's actually just a turn of the wheel. Now, what you do have to touch is this right here to put down your rear windows. So these operate your front windows, but as soon as you hit this rear button and it lights up, when you hit this, it's going to open your windows in the back. And it is a one-touch operation, so I really do like that, but you know, it's just kind of an interesting thing, and it's a consolidation of buttons, and once you get used to it, it's not a problem. But I will say there were a couple of times when I was like, you know, futzing around with this, and then I lit up that, and then I was like, oh wait, what does that do? So that's a touch space. These are not touch spaces. And your lock and unlock is a touch space, and then child lock on or off. Also a touch space. Oh, very sensitive. Well, it was sensitive, not sensitive now. Okay, a little bit glitchy. Something you'd have to get used to. Okay, on to this right here. So this is the screen that you have, and even though you have a view button right here, you really can't change what you're seeing too much. As far as I could tell in the brief time that I've been driving this, there is no option to see the map behind the wheel. And I mean, it does look like there's something going on in the background, but I don't know why it's not showing up. So you do have some options, but yeah, you're pretty limited, and this is a really small space, so you're not going to want to see or use this for too much anyway. So that doesn't bother me. Now, onto the infotainment system. I haven't driven too many Volkswagens lately, and when I have driven them, I've probably been a little bit hard on this infotainment system because I don't know, it's just awkward and a little bit unfamiliar. You do have, you know, again, the sliders, volume for your climate controls, and when my fingers are cold or really dry, I'll be honest, this doesn't pick up on that too much. So that's a little bit problematic for me. But for the most part, I mean, it's lotion and I drink a lot of water, so I'm fine. And, you know, my hands, you know, haven't been too cold during this test period. So not a huge deal, but sliders there. However, the more I've been using this system,
the more I've kind of appreciated how this system operates. And I think this is a really good integration of Apple CarPlay and the native system that you have going on here. So these are kind of your little icons up at the top where you can switch between vehicle controls. You have your app options here. You can always go back to your home button here. And I like the fact that you can very easily kind of maneuver between those things. You have your touch space right there for your Apple CarPlay. But again, you can go back to your vehicle settings and your home screen pretty easily just by touching through this. But what I think is really cool is as you swipe through, and I am going to point out there's a little bit of lag going on, but that's because I'm recording with my phone while I'm dealing with the infotainment system, and I have my phone Bluetooth paired to this. So this is not laggy. But as you swipe through, it has my phone information from Apple CarPlay here, and you can customize more tiles and screens. And if I were listening to a podcast, that would show up here. And so I like the fact that it even just brings some of the things that you're using into the main menu, and as you swipe through, you can just easily access them without going into Apple CarPlay itself. And I really appreciate that. I think this is a really nice integration of this system, and I'm actually impressed. Now, if I were going to go into Apple Maps and I wanted to go someplace, say I wanted to go to a charging station, so it would pop up my options. We'll go to Electrify America, and it would give me the instructions in here. Then when you pop over into this space right here, it will show your instructions in your little bitty screen right here. Now, I will point out this does have a head-up display. I don't know if you can see it, but it does also put your Apple CarPlay, Apple Maps instructions into the head-up display as well. So you have some redundancies going on that you don't need to keep into the Apple Maps. You can go into, see where you're going on the display or in the head-up display. And what I find really interesting is here, it's telling you to go straight, but here it's telling you more specifically 200 meters. So I don't know, it gives you different information depending on which screen you're looking at. Now, while we are talking about the infotainment system, we should talk about the climate controls and the seats just a little bit. So you can usually turn on the heated seat and the cooled seat at the same time from these little icons right here. But if you want to do further climate adjustments, you can hit the climate button, and it allows you to do your climate things from turning it off to, increasing the fan speed to, well, you have this right here where you can already, without going into this, turn the heat up or down. But you can also, show where you want the vents to be coming from. Or if you wanted to, you could go into this smart menu, and this is really kind of cool because it gives you, my feet. If I want to cool my feet, I can just hit that, and then all of a sudden it'll push cold air down on my feet. If you want fresh air, it'll open up the vents. And so I like the idea that it can do, and it turns on the heated steering wheel if you want warm hands. So I like the fact that you can just do this quick smart hot button, and I feel like that's kind of a clever thing that they've got going on right here. So we're just gonna make sure that, I want the vent speed. Where'd the vent speed go? Yeah, we'll just turn all that down. While it is not my preference to have your climate controls through the screen, they give you the frequently touched items, easily accessed here, and then, easily accessed here. In addition, then they have the smart features, which quick one button touch and you're good to go. Now, the other thing that I will talk about is also going to be this. If you hit the seat icon, in addition to allowing for massage function, this is really interesting because you can actually set the passenger position from the driver's seat, and you can synchronize it. It will essentially move the front passenger seat to mimic the driver's seat. My front passenger would hate me if I did that. Yeah, they would My husband would kill me. But you could do that if you wanted to. All right, before we leave this infotainment screen, I feel like the other thing we at least need to talk about is going to be the rear view camera. So when you put the vehicle into reverse, you do have an around view camera and the backup camera that pops up. You have dynamic guidelines that show not only in the backup camera, but also in the around view camera. And then if you put it into drive, the dynamic guidelines and the view switches to the front. Now, the one thing that I do want to say is the backup camera is a lot more clear than the front camera, and that's a little bit hinky. But also at night, the view is just a little bit fuzzy. So it looks pretty good in daylight, but at night when it's a little bit dark outside and you really want it to work well, it's just a little bit less. It's not awful, it's not horrible, but it's just a little bit less. And yes, this does have the park assist function, so before we close out this review completely, we will check that out as well. But before we get into some lower tech features and the park assist, I do want to take a quick look at what is going on here. So, you know, as we talked about earlier, this is going to be for the view of what's going on here. You do have your heated steering wheel button redundant on the screen in addition to in your climate controls. And then this right here, if you were on your radio, would change your channels. Over here, you have your volume function. So again, similar to the slider over here, this is a little on the wheel and it's pretty touch sensitive and easy to use. And then these controls right here are all going to be for your cruise control. So this is an adaptive system, but you can have the option of, you know, travel assist, you can do adaptive cruise control, and you can do just regular cruise control. So I know a lot of people don't like the nannies and they want just regular cruise control. You can do that just by pressing this button. Now, in terms of low-techy tech things, there are just a couple things I want to show in this second row that I think are worth mentioning. And one of those is this movable center console. So first off, it does have a drawer that pops out, and I think that's really cool. So people in the second row can store stuff in here and hide it away if they want to. But the even cooler thing is going to be the fact that this actually moves. So you have like a little lock right here that you can press and it pops it out of the floor. You've got two little tabs that stick up. And on the bottom, you have just like some little holes that you want to put on tabs. And you have tabs in the floor right here. So you could essentially put the console here, and you have tabs a little bit further back, so you could put the console here, which means that you have access to put it in, you know, for the second row and access to the third row. You have it, you know, just, you know, for second row access if you want it, or again, you can put it back in the first row. So this is really light. I would say it's maybe about 10 pounds, and it, you know, it's easy to maneuver in and out of the different spaces. I imagine if you asked nicely, you could probably buy an extra one of these. You could have two center consoles if you have the captain's chair option. To put this back in space, you just line the tabs up with the holes on the bottom, and then you just kind of press it back into place and it locks back into place. Now, the other low-techy kind of cool feature back here is going to be the fact that these windows actually open. So we pointed this out from the front with that silly rear button, but I think it's worth restating. One touch press and you have an open window here. I don't know. I think that's cool. And you do have the window lock button, so if you don't want kids playing with this, you can prevent that. But I think that's cool. Now, before we leave the second row, in addition to the oodles of legroom you have behind my driving position, I do want to point out a couple more things. This specific model has rear seat climate controls as well as heated seats to make this area a little bit more comfortable. And then, yeah, you do have your air vents in the headliners. So all around, I think this is a really good second row with a lot of high-tech and low-tech features that are going to make passengers comfortable. All right, as we look at the parking feature, the Park Assist feature on the Volkswagen ID Buzz, I'm gonna give you some driving impressions, and you know what? We'll just start driving. We'll go look for a parallel parking spot. So the first thing I want to point out is that I really do have a good driving position. I feel like I'm the right amount of distance from the wheel, and I have really good visibility out of all of the windows. Now, this also has a really good turning radius. So I'm kind of in a cul-de-sac here, and I was almost able to make it. I think I didn't pull it wide enough to get it all the way around, but this has a really good turning radius for such a long vehicle. So as we were driving along, looking for a parking space, I will say this is a really smooth operator. It's very comfortable in terms of going over speed bumps and dealing with some of the more aggressive potholes that you would encounter in a city space. So I think I found a parking space up here, and what you need to do is hit your little icons, go into your Park Assist, and hit the start button. And I'm going to continue driving forward because this is the space I want. It's searching for a parking spot, and it has found one. It shows the location, and it says, in order to use Park Assist, continue driving forward. So I'm going to drive forward. It says, to park, please stop the vehicle, press the brake pedal, and hit start. So it turned on my blinker for me, and now it has taken over the steering, and it has taken over I think the brake, but just to be sure, I'm gonna put my foot on the brake anyway. And ooh, that is really close up front, but it cleared it. It cleared it, and it did. It stopped the vehicle. It's switched it into drive. It's moving it forward, and I intervened with the brake because that made me a little nervous. So the vehicle is parked. So it did all of the steering. It got me into the space, and it did a really nice job. Now I wonder if it will actually get me out of the space. To exit the parking space, turn on the turn signal, and I'm going to hit start. So release the brake, exiting the parking space, steering intervention active. It saw a vehicle coming up, so it stopped. It did all of the braking, and it says vehicle has left the parking space. Please press the brake pedal to take over the vehicle. So I'm taking over the vehicle. I'm going to put it into drive. All right. That worked pretty well. I mean, once you learn how to do it, and I will say this is a little bit cumbersome, you know, having to go in to that, but I do wonder if, so I wonder if it'll do parking on the other side of the vehicle. So it says it's searching for parking spaces. And yes, okay, so it does it on both the right and the left. So releasing the brake, turned on the blinker, and it is taking over the steering and the speed modulation function. I have to admit, I'm not as good parking on the left as I am on the right, so I might actually use this on the left side. Vehicle is parked, and it turned it off. So it will park on the right and the left. It works fairly well. You just have to remember to go in and hit this parking function so that it will go ahead and put you into the system. Now, you can also get to it by hitting reverse and popping up the camera. And once you pop up the camera, if you hit Park Assist, it will allow you to exit the space. And you can hit start. And I like the fact that it is looking for vehicles coming up from before you or behind you, and then it puts the onus on you to actually drive out of the spot. It just puts you in the position to get out of the spot. as far as park assist functions go, I like that. In terms of other driving impressions, I will say the one thing that I definitely had to get used to on this vehicle was the fact that there is no front. You know, just kind of whoop, it goes down. And so you have to get used to the spatial relations of the vehicle, especially as you are turning. So I'll take you into an alley really quick, and you know, I'm finding myself looking at, you know, that mirror a lot to make sure that I'm clearing the end. But what I found you have to do is you have to kind of go beyond where you think you're going to turn just a little bit, and then make your turn, because you have more clearance up front, less clearance in the back, and then so you kind of make a wider turn than what you think. But again, with a good turning radius, this handles it pretty well. Overall, I think the Volkswagen ID Buzz is a really clever, unique vehicle. It offers space for 3 rows of passengers, and not just shorties like me, but even taller passengers. I had people who were 6'4" sitting in the 3rd row, and they were comfortable. And so I think it's a clever, unique vehicle. People might be a little bit turned off the price because its base price is $60,000, and people might be turned off a little bit by the range because that's 234 miles max. But outside of that, if you're just using this for city driving, I think this is a really great option for a family vehicle with a lot of cool tech. So that is just a quick tech check of the Volkswagen ID Buzz. I will see you next time with a new car du jour.